Simon, welcome back. How are you today?
Good. It feels like I just spoke with you yesterday.
Yes. Okay, so this week, I know that you plan to talk about the forms and the modules, but if possible, we got lots of requests from people asking about the basics. So all the left side of Zoho books, just to run over it, the difference between an invoice, retainer invoice, when to use it, what is a bill or expense, just something for, something very basic, if possible.
Yeah, absolutely. It's funny that people are asking about this stuff because it's so important to know the system that you're using, right?
Yes.
If you're just a blind monkey, if you just want to jump in and just try to use it all, you have to understand what is the purpose of each one. Sure.
Yeah. So I think that every business owner must know his accounting system. In my case, I'm not the one who is doing the accounting, but I know everything that's happening there. So I think that even if you don't want to do it, which I think most business owners will give, like company like yours or other companies, do the books for me, but you need to know what's going on. You need to know how to look at the report to understand, because this is your cockpit. You're flying, 1,000 kilometers per hour without seeing anything, and that's scary. So you need to know what's going on in your accounting.
Absolutely. Yeah. Let's dive right in.
Okay.
Right from the get-go, this is the system on its own, right? When you log in, you have the dashboard. Okay. We're going to go through the left-hand side. So this area.
Yes.
Okay? And we're mostly going to talk about the ones that are really important to the business owner. Okay. We're going to dive into the other ones, but they're not as important. We could talk about it in another segment, maybe.
Let's do just the if possible, items, sales, purchases.
Done. Okay. That's a good idea.
Simple.
Beautiful. Let's skip the accountant. Accountants are boring. So why the hell do we need to go in there, right?
Exactly. We don't like accountants.
Screw those guys. Okay. So under items, this is obviously a section that's built for all your services and all your goods. Now, the interesting piece here is inventory adjustments is only going to be available if you add the inventory function. Yeah, exactly. So with the items, pretty straightforward. You add all of them here. You code them to the accounts that they're relative to, right? So the sales or another type of sales.
And just one thing, if you have your items or products in Zoho CRM, it will be synced automatically once you enable the integration with Zoho Books.
Yes.
So back and forth, same database, just so you know.
Yeah, you're right. Exactly. And that's pretty much it. So you can put like a nice photo here. You can enable the tracking of the inventory if you want. But again, this is why this area is available. Typically, you will only have 1 and 2. So that's pretty much it.
Okay,
very
and
straightforward.
On the left side, I will have how much the product or service cost. Mm-hmm. On the right side, if I need to, I will have a checkbox on purchase information, which means how much I spent on it.
Yeah, and pretty much the only reason why you have the purchase checkbox marked is when you do a purchase, a bill or a PO, you can enter the SKU or the item code, and then the price would then pop up and everything would be coded for you. So this is really the only reason why you would have this here on a goods or service without inventory tracking.
And the reason that I have Canadian dollars on the top is because my home currency is Canadian dollar, but you can sell in any currency.
Yeah. Okay. And the currency is determined by the customer. So when you open the customer, when you add and you start populating the invoice, everything gets adjusted into the currency of the customer.
That's right. And if you created a customer with a currency, let's say Canadian dollars, you created your first invoice. From that moment on, you're locked on Canadian dollars. You cannot change it to USD or something else.
Yeah. And this is a good control tool to make sure that business owners don't make mistakes and, toggle between currencies. Currencies is a very, very finicky thing with accounting software. So you have to run it properly. It's very, very, very complex. Okay. So items is pretty straightforward. Now, the beautiful thing is when you're in this window, you can then start to report and have different views of these items.
Can you just go 1 second again to create a new item?
Sure.
So one thing that I saw lots of mistakes in the account section, right now you assigned it, for example, for sales.
Yeah.
But let's say that your item is Zoho CRM Course.
Yeah.
It's the name of this product. I see lots of people creating accounts and they just use the out of the box instead of creating an account named Courses, and
Exactly.
Courses will be under sales.
Yeah.
And then in the reporting, you can actually see how much money you're making from, the category Courses.
Yeah, exactly. And by the way, this ties into the previous video that we filmed about tag reporting, because you can have the account as courses, and then with the associated tags, you can have you can have a course tag that talks about if it's a CRM one,
Right.
or another platform. So yeah, absolutely. It's an incredible idea.
Okay. So it's good to have some professional advice about how to construct the accounts and their structure, right?
Yeah, we like to see accounts here, but the most important thing is to make sure that they're done professionally. Custom chart of accounts is a really, really important thing for the business owner, because it sets you from day one until whenever, right? The idea is that you can build on it.
And also, if one day you want to sell or dilute your position and bring more people on board, this is where they're looking for the reports. And if it doesn't look good and make sense, so probably there will be a no after viewing it.
Yeah, exactly. It's such a value add to have a nice chart of accounts, and it just allows you to report really nicely and then actually understand your business better, right? So sales, it's broken out and it's really straightforward. You have your accounts receivable as sales and your accounts payable as purchases. AP,
right. So
AR.
the sales, money coming in, purchase, money going out.
Exactly.
Okay.
And very nice and easy, by the way. So we have the customers, and this is the master data. So it's the customer master data database.
And
customer
with the active
database.
Customers on the top, you can have views, right?
Exactly.
Okay, like Zoho CRM, same thing.
Yeah, same thing. Zoho CRM is a little bit more obviously complicated and complex in terms of you can do so much more with it. But here you can create custom views with some rules, and it's quite nice actually. And you can edit the patterns too. It's pretty incredible.
Yeah.
Okay, so again, we're going to talk about this. So this is the layout for creating a new customer. I don't think we need to really dive into it. It's pretty straightforward all across the board with different systems. You have your custom fields, reporting tags, which again, we talked about the other video, and then you got your customer marks. So everything here is straightforward. We'll dive into it at some point. I think we'll do another video on this.
Okay.
Estimates, again, this is the interesting piece. So now we're going to talk about what makes a financial impact, because it's really important. A lot of business owners, they ask us, what marks the dollars on the P&L? At which point do I see the dollars come to the profit and loss? So off the bat, I can tell you one thing. Estimates don't impact the financials at all. In fact, it's just a document generated. And it's the same thing with sales orders. So these two, identical. The conversion process goes from estimate to sales order to invoice. Okay. So it's kind of like a flow.
Why do I need to use a sales order? Estimate, I understand. I gave you a price. I will log it in the system.
Yeah.
If you say yes, I convert to an invoice. Simple.
Yeah.
Why do I need to have a sales order?
It's a good question. So with a sales order, you're essentially committing certain services or products. So when you're doing an estimate, this has no impact at all in terms of any financial impact, dollar or inventory. Exactly. When you're doing sales orders, you're actually committing the service. Now, if you're a service company, like this one's an accounting company, it's a sample. There's no like inventory on hand. But if you're a company that sells a product, as soon as you create the sales order, your inventory goes from available to committed. So it gets shifted. And now you can't sell as much or, commit to as much sales. And you can know this, right? That's the important piece.
So that will be a commitment from the business. When the estimate is approved, I'm generating a sales order.
Yeah, exactly. And it's also good to send this to customers, right? Because the customer might have a purchase order on their end that they want to fulfill and commit to, right? So they could say,
Question for you, and that's about taxation. When I'm creating a sales order, I am committing to provide you a certain service, but you didn't pay me yet.
Yeah.
When I'm producing an invoice, so let's say that now you need to pay me in three months. If I will produce an invoice right now, I'm paying taxes immediately, but getting paid in 3 months. So it's better for me to do the sales order, commit with everything, but no money was exchanged and no taxation is impacted. Is it correct?
100%. And it's all about when the revenue is supposed to hit, right? When is the service provided and when is the product transferred to the client, right?
Yeah.
So the other piece is the flip side is, let's just say you need to collect some money now as a deposit, right? Because you could say, oh, well, I'm not going to finish the service until 3 months from now.
Right.
But we need some sort of confirmation in terms of money consideration to actually commit and say, okay, this deal is closed. So this is where your retainer invoice section is really, really interesting. So you can create a retainer for a customer. And this will be applied against, let's just use Amazing Business Results as an example. And this way, again, this has financial impact, right? Because this retainer invoice holds the money on the balance sheet. So it doesn't create the sale. There's no tax that is involved, but it's prepared to receive some money against the services in the future.
Yep. I'm a big fan of retainer invoices.
Yeah, lawyers love this stuff. Everybody loves money, right?
Yeah, but I like it because I don't need to pay taxes when I'm getting a retainer invoice, only when I'm allocating it to an invoice. And also the way that Zoho created the retainer invoice is a breeze, because when I have an invoice and I need to collect money from the retainer invoice, and the retainer invoice for me, it's like a small bank account that's waiting for me.
Exactly, yeah.
I just click on allocate funds, and you can show them right now how to do it.
Yeah.
And it takes a second, and it's beautiful. And you can always see how much is remaining in the retainer invoice.
Yeah, exactly. So any of these transactions at all, as soon as they're marked sent, and you see the little banner over here, you can always scroll down and see if there's any financial impact. And you see right here, at this point, there's nothing.
Yeah, just record the payment, for example.
Let's just record the payment. Let's just say the customer paid right away. It went into undeposited funds. They paid with cash. Okay. So now this customer paid. Okay. So this amount was paid. Now, there's the payment posting. Okay. So you can always toggle here at the top. It's pretty much association. And now with the payment posting, you can always scroll down and see there is the journal. Okay. Now you can see
account it went.
Exactly. Unearned revenue is not anywhere on the P&L. Unearned revenue is actually a liability. Okay. And undeposited funds is the asset. This is the bank account that it goes into. Again, I'm not going to bore you with the accounting stuff because the hell with that.
Thank you.
Now,
let's create an invoice for the same client for $1,000. So it's part one of the job.
Okay. Let's just say we did some automation work. The rate was 1,000. Done. Okay. Save as draft. Now take this in right away. When you click save as draft, there's no journal. Okay. Because it's in draft mode. We're going to click mark as sent. And it's exactly what you said. You see at the top, it says retainers available. Okay. And you can click apply now to clear off this invoice. And you could say, okay, well, I want to leave some of the retainer for later. And I want the customer to pay 50% of this invoice. So you can apply portions. It's so convenient.
Okay. Click on apply retainer.
Yeah.
And let's close the entire invoice. Let's make $1,000. Yeah.
Sure. Done.
Perfect. So now it's paid. And now if you will have a second invoice, you will see that your retainer is now 1,500.
Yeah, that's correct. We can actually, let's just do this quickly. We can clone this one to skip a couple of buttons. We can do this.
So that's like the second milestone, a month after. Now you can just apply and finish it.
Now, any blue buttons are clickable buttons, which is really convenient. So we can toggle between, the modules here by simply clicking on the blue. So from here, we jump right into the customer area and we can have like a high level little dashboard for the customer. Okay.
And I want to show something cool. If you go to transactions.
Yeah.
So here you can see all the invoices that were sent, their status, if they're overdue, paid, and so on, estimates, retainer invoice balances. It's all here.
Incredible,
It's amazing.
Yeah. And, from the front page, you can obviously just click on any of this stuff. And even on the unused credits, if you click on this, you can see that the retainer has a balance of 1,500 and you can click apply to invoice. It's so convenient. Every single area has a button that can lead you or take you somewhere else to resolve a problem. And the entirety of it is it's going to save you time, bottom line, right?
It's amazing. I love the way that they work here.
Yeah. And the payments received, pretty self-explanatory. This ties into all the other processes here.
Mm-hmm.
Recurring invoices is a beautiful one, but I think we're going to talk about it maybe in another video because it can get pretty complex.
Yep. And just one comment about recurring invoices. There is another product from Zoho, and that's a Zoho subscription. Zoho subscription is basically doing recurring. The only thing is that Zoho subscription is much more complicated. So I always try to push people to Zoho Books recurring invoices instead of using the beast of Zoho subscriptions. Until now, most of the cases, it actually works fine. I had only actually one client that had to use Zoho subscription because of some features, but recurring invoices, phenomenal, very good.
Yeah, and we'll dive into it all. I like that every single piece here, there's a life cycle. They have little segments and little, photos. It's so nice for the user to understand what the process is like. And yeah, it's a very nice
And
credit
with the
notes.
recurring invoice, just one thing for the recurring invoice, you have few options when the invoice is being created every month or week, whatever you decide. It can or send the invoice to the client, or create the invoice as draft, or build the credit card and send a receipt. So yeah, that's it. Not talking about it anymore.
It's honestly such a great tool, and I don't think there's too many software out there that can actually do the same thing in terms of billing the actual customer, posting the payment entirely. But we'll definitely dive into that in another video.
It's also sending reminders, and if there is a bounce, the client is getting an email, hey, your card bounced, maybe fix it. It's doing everything for you. It's wonderful system.
I would say that the majority of our clients that are on the Zoho platform, and because we service all the platforms, it's really, I'm just going to talk about the Zoho one, but they love this section. This entire sales section is like a huge hit because they have everything at the push of a button, right?
The system pretty good. You need to create a course.
No, we're building a Zoho Books course. It's actually still in the making. We're almost done. So it's going to be live hopefully in the next little while. It's a beast of a course.
Very cool. Okay.
Yeah, it's absolutely phenomenal. But we'll talk about that.
I'm your first student.
Done. Good. Okay. So we talked about sales. Let's talk about purchases.
Wait, the credit notes. What is a credit note?
Oh yeah. Okay. So credit notes is just a kind of a reversal of an invoice. It's a refund. It's a courtesy write-off.
I sent $1,000 invoice. I got paid for it. The client giving me a hard time. I want to give him your money. Don't call me again.
Yeah.
Is that the credit note?
Yeah. You have to create a credit note, and then you have to allocate a refund against it. And let's go ahead and do that. So there are a couple of ways of doing that. You can click here and click Amazing Business Results and type it manually in. Now, the important piece here is you want to make sure you're putting the credit note to the same item that you invoiced, right? So that the income on the P&L is offset properly.
Okay.
So you can do it this way. The other way that you could do it is obviously you can go to the actual invoice that's paid.
That's easier.
Yeah. And if it's paid, you can create a credit note right here.
So it's saving you all the clicks.
So many clicks. Now, if it's unpaid, you can do the exact same thing, create credit note, and it's going to apply the credit note against this unpaid invoice. So then the customer owes you nothing. Got it?
So wait, so if it's unpaid, I just sent it over email, 1,500. Is it not easier just to void it?
Well, it's always a good idea to keep track of all the documentation, right? If you've sent an invoice to a client, you don't ever want to be in the position 6 months later that the client says, oh, well, this one, we need a refund for this. Well, you can't trace anything if it's deleted.
You don't know if it was paid, not.
Exactly.
I see. So you create a credit note against the sent invoice.
Yeah.
And then in your profit and loss, basically you're even, but here you have a track of what happened.
That's correct. So when we create this credit note, you see it says paid, but you see it says credits applied. And you can put some notes here. Customer declined service, didn't want to pay for it. Something like that. Okay.
Perfect.
Now the other option is for us to do a credit note and then, post it. This is for an invoice that's already paid. Okay. And when you go in there under transactions, we're doing the exact same thing. Credit note. You see, it's in draft. You can then go to the credit note. This is the example that you said. If the customer's already paid it and they're now asking for the money back, then you can create the credit note, and then instead you can click refund. Okay. And this does the posting to pay it back.
Got it. And from account, you say where you gave the money from.
Exactly. Okay.
I see. And in my system that I have Stripe credit card processing services, will I have Stripe there as one of the accounts? Or
yeah, you can click Stripe, but the thing is, it depends on the integration with the payment processing company, because some of them can allow you to process a refund from the system, but I'm not sure if all of them can. Yeah, it depends on the integration. Okay. So now we talked about sales. Let's talk about purchases.
Okay.
Now, if you think about these two things, it's legitimately just the flip reverse of the exact same thing. So from the top, you have your vendors, which are identical, same exact type of layout.
So vendor will be someone I'm paying to.
Yeah.
And on the other side, on the sales side, the customers. So the customers will be the vendors just flipped.
Exactly. And the expenses, we're going to talk about the difference between expensive and bills in a second. But before we do that, purchase orders are your sales orders for the sales side of things. Okay. So it's the exact same thing. No financial impact based off of purchase orders.
Purchase orders will be like sales orders when we checked it on the sales.
Exactly. Yeah.
So it's allocating inventory, or I know I'm supposed to get inventory because it's from the vendor, but I did not pay anything for it yet.
Yeah, and you can pay against if a customer provides you what is it called? It's like an invoice that's a pro forma. The customer can send you a pro forma invoice. You pay it, fine. That's a deposit against a purchase order, so that can be done as well. Now, okay, let's talk about the differences between expense and bills, because we don't have this option in sales. Okay. Expenses and bills, the main difference is that one is COD and one hits your accounts payable. Okay.
So expense will be paying for something right now.
Yeah.
Right? I just bought from you an iPhone. You got $1,200. This is an expense, money out of my account.
Exactly.
Bill will be an expense that next month I'm going to release the money.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay.
Typically invoices, if you get an invoice, goes into bills. If you have a receipt or you paid something with your credit card or debit card, it'll go into expenses. It's much easier to process it this way.
Got it. So an invoice that is net 30 will be a bill.
Exactly.
Got it. So that's an obligation for me to pay.
Exactly. Yeah. And this way it's on the balance sheet as well, right? Because it's going to be in the
was my next question. How do I see it? Yeah. Okay. Thank you.
Yeah, exactly. So it's going to be in your balance sheet. It's going to be under accounts payable, and then you can pay it when you need it. And you can set up some reporting automations to trigger, net 30 when some things have been, are overdue. Now, the layout and design between expenses and bills is pretty much, the same idea. It just looks a little different. With expense, it's very simplified because we don't need as much information about the expense. It's pretty straightforward. Same type of idea.
You choose the account, the amount,
and what bank you paid it out of, the credit card. Exactly.
Now, if I will have, let's say, the bank feeds. So that was a session from a few weeks ago. If I will have the bank feeds and I click on one of the bank feeds and I match it to an account, it will create an expense, right? Because this is a COD. Okay.
If you're doing match, it typically matches against a bill or an expense. It could be either.
So the system knows when it's a bill, when it's an expense?
So when you're adding directly from the bank, when you're just clicking add, so I'll show you. When you're in this area here, and when you process the expense here, you see the categories of the expense.
I see. So it's asking you if an expense. I see.
So when you're coding it, it's legitimately the exact same window that we were just at. But if you're matching it, right? So if you're matching it against this would be either an expense or a bill. It could be both. Okay. Okay. Now in the bills, it looks the exact same as the customer invoice. It's just the flip side. It's the payable side of things. So you're selecting a vendor, you're selecting a bill number, and it's the exact same thing. And you can put in the item details, you can pick an item, right? Whatever you want, or you can simply just type, okay? Paid for consulting, okay? And you can choose the account here. Consultant expense. Perfect.
Got it.
Okay. Same exact idea.
Can you assign tags also in bills?
Yeah, absolutely. And that's the entire idea. So we talked about this in the other video. The whole point of tag reporting is that you can do it with the sales and the purchases so that you can report off of both. So here you click show additional and there's the reporting tags.
I see.
Okay.
So it's all ties together. This entire system, basically, you can go from one path or a different path, but it all connects eventually.
Yeah, it's an ecosystem. And if you treat the ecosystem right, it's going to spit out some nice reports that can give you a little bit more insight on the business. The vendor credits are the same thing as the sales credit notes or credit memos.
Yep, you
Identical
just
process.
reverse.
Yeah. And again, a lot of these do the exact same thing, but for two different segments, right? AR or AP. But bottom line, this is the area that is most commonly used in the system because this is what develops your profit and loss and your balance sheet and your record keeping. Okay.
And the recurring bill would be like, let's say I have my internet bill every month, $59, bang, bang, bang. So that
exactly. Yeah, exactly.
But you can do also the same as a rule, right? From the bank feeds, you can do a rule on raw AT&T, $59, create an expense automatically and categorize it.
Yeah. And the bank rules can really take you to the next level. And when you're doing bank rules, these are all expenses. They're not bills.
It sounds like you prefer to do it from the bank versus the recurring bills, right?
Yeah. What people typically who use the expense section end up using it from the banking directly. You don't have too many people posting expenses here and then clicking match the expense in the bank.
Yeah,
most of the time,
2 steps. Yeah. Why
double the work. Most of the time it's either through rules or through just manually coding and adding it in.
So eventually, when you have proper rules in the system, the amount of time that you need to spend on the bookkeeping is going down dramatically, right?
Yeah, significantly. It'll save so much time. And it depends on the way that you're doing backup, which we'll talk about in another video on the documentation. But it depends on how you're doing backup as well. Because for many companies and countries, you have to use backup and supply backup and keep backup. You don't want to get hit by the IRS, right?
Nope.
We don't want that.
Nope. Okay, very good. Simon, thank you very much. I'm learning every day more and more. So it's, for me, for sure, it's a good adventure. So thank you very much for being with me. And what do you plan for next week?
Yeah, I think next week we'll talk about the recurring invoices and bills. I think that would be really, really nice for people to understand how to use those functions.
Absolutely.
Let's do that.
Okay, done. Okay.
Fantastic.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Simon. See you next week.
It's my pleasure.